more recent practitioners here. Welcome, we're so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So tell us a little bit about, first of all, we always like to know kind of your background. How did you get involved with astrology, and what made you fall in love with it, and what were all the aha moments?
Oh, wow. Well, I started as a kid, like so many people do, by reading Linda Goodman's Sun Signs Astrology, and I read it over and over again. And so, of course, I started seeing, I could tell by looking at people sometimes what they were, but I also noticed that it didn't really completely describe my personality. You know, there were things about it like, oh, well, I'm not like that. But it was still in the background, and then at various times throughout the years, I would just pick up a book and read it. And at one point, for some reason, I became obsessed with finding out what my moon sign was. Because I found out by reading books that there was more than a sun sign. I was like, wow, more than a sun sign. There's a moon sign, and there's Venus, Jupiter, I mean, all the planets. There's a sign that they can be in your birth chart. And I spent the whole day at Borders reading all these books, trying to figure out my moon sign, because I didn't know that there was such thing as a horoscope. Amazing, and I didn't know. Then I narrowed it down to two signs. It was either Libra or Pisces. And I asked my husband at the time which one he thought it was, and he said, oh, it's Pisces, definitely. And then I asked my now husband, who I had known since I was 16, which one he thought it was. He said the same thing. He says, oh, it's Pisces. Well, very shortly after that, I met a woman, and she was an astrologer. And she showed me how to do a chart and how to read the ephemeris, and it was like my whole life changed. When she gave me the chart, guess what my moon sign was? Pisces. I was like, wow. How could they figure that out just from two descriptions that were so close? They were able to zone in on that one thing. So from that point on, I just really dove into studying it, and it's just been a journey ever since.
I understand that we have a sun sign.
Yes.
And and that's the date of our birth. We have a moon sign, and then we have a rising sign.
Right, the rising sign is based on a time that we're born. Because the rising sign, the horoscope is like any other map, where it has an east, west, north, and south direction on it. And the east is, of course, when we were born, when we rise, you know, onto earth, so to speak. And that has to do with our body, our appearance, people's first impression of us, which can be very different than our sun sign. And then the moon sign too, and especially in Vedic astrology, is more important than the sun. Because the moon is the mind, it's the heart, it's our, you know, our ego, pretty much. And how we feel about our life is actually more important sometimes than how we think about our life. And the sun has more to do with our soul connection to, like everybody else, but to everybody else, I should say. But the mind is the individual part of us. The moon is the individual part of us.
Now, everyone knows we just signed the lease for our new building, and during Karen's interview, I had asked her to give me an astrology reading on the building. And do you remember what you told me?
Well, yesterday I asked you if we recorded the conversation because I couldn't remember exactly what I told you, but I thought I said that you would be moving in September. And when you told me yesterday that the lease said that you were going to be moving in September, I went, great. Right, but see, but that's horary astrology. And horary astrology is not your birth chart. It has nothing to do with what time you were born. It has to do with what time you ask a question that really matters to you. It has to be something that you really care about, otherwise it won't show up. And what it shows is the planets are in exactly the right position at the moment that you ask the question for the interpreter to read it. And that's where basically what I am. I'm like a map interpreter. And it's a symbolic language. You learn the language, and then once you learn the language, it really is not that hard to read. It's pretty clear.
So the position of the planets and the houses that they're in really guide how things will go. either direction?
It's a picture of that moment that you asked the question, and it shows the past, the present, and the future. To some extent, I mean, horary is more, horary means actually, comes from the word hora, which is a Latin word for of the hour. So that chart is basically good for just that question.
In that moment that you
In that
asked it.
moment that you ask it, you can look ahead to a certain point. But, you know, you can't keep using that chart forever about that.
So if I ask the same question now, I would hope I'd get the same answer.
You
I hope
would,
I'm still,
yeah.
I hope I'm still
so.
moving in September 1st, but there might be other things that are also playing into the people around me that will show up to be helpful. And
The question provides the context. So since you're talking about moving, it would have to involve like months, you know, the length of time of months or maybe even years. But it probably wouldn't go on for decades, anything like that. But I want to give an example of how horary astrology basically proves the principle of synchronicity, where the universe is reflecting us and we're reflecting the universe. And you can see it when a person asks a question at just the right time for the planets to be in the right position to answer that question in great detail. The other day I was reading a novel. One of the things I love for fun is to read mysteries. And hopefully nobody's reading this book right now because this will be a spoiler alert, but the name of the book is The Murder Artist by John Case. I love murder mysteries.
Anybody reading it right now?
Hopefully not. And it's about a father who takes his two twin boys to a Renaissance fair and they disappear. Well, when I was reading the book, I remembered that my horary teacher used to cast horary charts to find out what was going to happen in his soap operas, because he was hooked on soap operas. He loved them. And I thought, you know what? I could do a horary about this book that I'm reading to find out what happened to the boys. Who took them? Where are they? Are they going to come back? And I cast a chart. Now, this is so incredible to me. This is just a book I'm reading,
this is
right?
an astrological way of looking at the last page of the book? Or?
Yes, it is. And I don't normally like to do that, but I thought this would be fun, right? So I'm going to write an article on it. So I cast the chart, and I can tell you just a few things about how it works, and that is, remember I told you about the northeast, south, and west. The horizon line, that's the east-west axis. The person who asks the question or the subject of the question belongs to the east point. And so that's like the rule. So the first thing that I looked at was the east point, the planet that ruled it. And it happened to be Venus in the sign of Gemini. Well, what is Gemini? The twins. And the reason that it was Venus is because the boys had white blonde hair and they were very handsome boys. So, and Venus ruled beauty and that sort of thing. And Gemini is a masculine sign. All the signs are divided up into masculine and feminine energy signs. So it showed, okay, there they are. There are the boys. It was amazing to me. And I mean, now I do this every day. And I'm always amazed, but I thought, look at this. This is just a novel I'm reading. And the planet that represents the boys was retrograde. What that means is that they're going to come back. They're going to be okay. And the planet that represented the father, his planet was right on a fixed star. And the name of the fixed star is Spica, and it's 23 degrees of Libra. And that star means that everything was going to turn out all right. It's a star of protection. And that's how it turned out. He went through all kinds of harrowing experiences trying to find his sons. And he was almost killed himself like several times, but he was always protected. And then when I looked to see, okay, who took the boys and a description of them. And the planet that represented the boys was up in the 9th house. Well, the 9th house is when you go to a special trip and you do a special thing. It's not driving around the neighborhood and doing your usual thing. So the Renaissance fair would fit under that category. And that's where the boys, the planets that ruled the boys was. And then the person that took them was Mercury in its own sign. Well, what that means is Mercury in Horary Astrology has a reputation of being, well, not honest. He's a trickster, and also Mercury was right next to the sun, and when it's right next to the sun, that means that you can't see what that person's actions are. It's hidden behind the light of the sun, because the sun blots out everything else. And I was like, that's amazing, because in the book, it turned out that the person who took the boys was a magician who worked in the Renaissance fair, and they traveled around the country. And he had apparently kidnapped other twins as well. And parts of the story are kind of gruesome, but they didn't go into much detail on that sort of thing. But the impression that you got was that this Mercury person was a magician, and he was crazy, obviously, and he wanted to recreate the old magic where people actually died when they did magic tricks. And so he was training the boys to do a magic trick where one of them would actually be killed. Because on stage, you know, it would look like they would do tricks where they would have the boy disappear and he would actually go somewhere else, and then the twin would pop up somewhere else. So it looked like it was the same person, but it wasn't. So anyway, and this, with the horary chart, was showing what was happening in the book. And so I knew that it was going to have a good ending.
So did you finish the book?
I finished the book.
And was it fun to see the horary chart?
It was great. It was great. It was really a fun way to read a mystery, you know. But the point to me about that is a horary chart can answer. Well, people come to me all the time for more important things, obviously, you know, like their relationships and whether or not they're going to get a job, and will the temp job that they have turn into a permanent job, and things that are really important to them. But that wouldn't even be possible. I wouldn't be able to read the chart and tell them, oh, well, you know, you have a coworker over here who really wants the position, and the boss really likes that person a little bit more than he likes you, so I'm thinking that maybe you should look for another position. How could that be unless the universe and the person was, if synchronicity wasn't real? You know, it's like, it's a proof every day when I look at it. It's like, wow, it really is true. That there's nothing too small and there's nothing too big. That, you know, that scripture where it says that God has counted every hair on our head. I think that's the truth. I mean, even a novel, for crying out loud, shows up on the chart.
At macro levels and at micro levels.
Yes, it's incredible.
There is order and chaos.
There is order and chaos, absolutely.
Everything is, but yet we can move through it. And as I was mentioning earlier about ease of path and struggle of path, it sounds like you're using these modality that you are so clearly adept at to reveal to people where the path looks, where it has obstacles, so they can realign to a path where there are no obstacles. And so I thank you for the work that you do. That is very, very helpful to people, because we do go through and we struggle so much, and it isn't necessary. We can find the easier path and the easier way to go. And for me, when I hear a story like that you reveal to someone there is someone more likely to get the other job, that simply means they're not meant to have that job.
There's something better for them.
And to want something that is not for their highest and best good. So if you and I were working with the same client, I would use a different approach, but I would actually have them go into prayer and say, show me this job, give me this or something better for the highest and best good of everyone concerned, and I would have them surrender. You're showing them a map, I'm having them go into trust, but yet both of us are allowing them to take the same course of moving away from something that's not for their highest and best good and for something that is into it. And that's why it's so beautiful to have all the different modalities, all the different practitioners.
It is interesting.
Because we come up to the same ending.
Exactly. And another thing that horary is good for is confirming your intuition. Most of the readings that I do for people are people who come to me and they say, you know, I feel that something is going on, but I can't put my finger on it exactly. And And so I'll do the chart, and they'll tell me about the situation, and then I'll tell them what I see in the chart, and they're like, I knew it. I could feel it. And so over time, if you, it is very empowering, yes. So I tell them that feeling that you have, you can trust that when you have that feeling, because it is telling you something is going on.
Nice.
You know, and over time, it'll get to the point where they don't really need me anymore. You know, they can just feel it, and they're like, oh, I've had that feeling before. I've had it verified over and over again. This is something I can trust.
Thank you for saying that. That is actually the ultimate goal of all holistic healing practitioners, that those that we help no longer need our help at some point in time.
Yeah.
We don't create dependent relationships. Our goal is to empower and to heal. And so thank you for actually making that affirmation. I appreciate that.
I actually see the chart as God having a conversation with us. Because you know, when you pray, and then you look for confirmation from your environment in some way or another that your prayer has been heard. With Horary, you get quite a detailed conversation, where God answers you back. And in fact, the Horary chart comes out better if you pray beforehand and you ask for guidance. But the interesting thing is that I've asked questions before where I didn't feel like a real strong sense of urgency, but I wanted to know, and it still reflected the reality of my question and gave me the details, and I had it confirmed because, well, time passes and it either happens or it doesn't. So it's to me, I feel like I'm just talking to the universe every day. It's really cool.
Very nice. Does anybody have any questions for Karen? I think it's really fascinating what you do. Anybody have any questions about the work and how it grows? No? Yeah, you do. I can feel the questions. Go ahead. Well, I think I'll be coming to see you for a few more questions.
Oh, okay.
I think it's great. And you're going to be a regular in our Holistic Healing Fair, which is the first Saturday.
That's my intention.
Yeah, so it's very good.
Thank you for letting me talk about my
you.
favorite subject.
No, I mean, astrology is something that I'm taking this bachelor's degree for my metaphysics, and I took the astrology course. I mean, and it was just, honestly, it was overwhelming. I think it's one of the branches in holistic healing where the practitioner has to be really diligent. There's so many things to learn and know about the different signs, the different houses, what they mean when they're clustered together. And I had a friend, I'm a Gemini, my sun sign, and she also was a Gemini, and she would say things to me like, I'm a double Gemini, and I never knew what that meant when she would say that. And I used to hear people saying, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, don't sign any contracts today. And a friend of mine once did a communication with Mercury and said, Mercury was really unhappy about being blamed for all the things that people were doing with miscommunication. It was like every time something wasn't clear about what they said, they said, oh, Mercury's in retrograde.
Blame it on Mercury, right. Well, when Mercury's retrograde and things go wrong, really what Mercury is doing is revealing things that were going to go wrong anyway. And he's saying, look, you have a chance to fix this here. So he's actually doing us a favor.
Yeah, we had oh yes,
well, I had the question of the Jyotish methodology and the Western, and the difference, and why there's a difference.
Well, there's a renaissance going on in the field of astrology right now. There are people who are researching and translating the old documents, and in India they have an unbroken tradition, meaning that they never had book burnings, they never had astrology outlawed, there was never anything like that in their culture like we had in the West, where we had the libraries of Alexandria burned that had all of the wisdom books in it. So the reason that there's a difference, I think, is because of that. And now in the West, we're starting to piece together the stuff that we've lost. And actually, the astrologers in the West and the astrologers in the East, way back when, they got together all the time. And whatever the West had, they taught to the Indians, and the Indians taught to the Westerners. But in India, everything was preserved. So, like for instance, right now, I'm using a technique that's actually an ancient Persian technique that was preserved by the Hindus. So therefore, I'm learning it in the Jyotish tradition, but it's actually Persian. So really what I'm trying to say is that there's probably only one system of astrology, but there's just pieces. And the pieces are enculturated, you know, infused with whatever culture that it's practiced in, but it's only one astrology. And actually there's some changes now in Vedic astrology where one of the main differences was that in the West we use the tropical zodiac that's based on the seasons. And in Jyotish, they use the sidereal zodiac, which is just based on the stars. And now there is quite a movement in Jyotish where the tropical system is being used for most techniques. But the stars, the constellations, are still being used for what they're called the nakshatras. And it's actually 27 signs, the original 27 signs based on the moon. And the moons, it's like each sign is divided up into 3 sections called a mansion, and each mansion correlates to a star constellation. So that we still use the sidereal for, because that's a very important part of the delineation of the chart and finding out your purpose and what you're doing here, what your skills are, and what your particular divine role is in the dance of life. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so that it's more coming together then.
It's coming together, yes.
Reuniting, it sounds like. Yeah.
Exactly, and Eastern and Western astrologers who are quite steeped in their traditions are coming together and they're comparing notes just like they used to do way back when in the old days. It's very exciting. And astrology has changed dramatically in just the last 30 years because of what they're finding and translating from Greek and Arabic and Latin and Sanskrit. And I've incorporated a lot of this stuff in my practice. And now it's no longer the vague psychological interpretations that really could apply to anyone. Now it can be very, very concrete.
And I would love to see the media remove these purposefully trivializing columns where they give, you know, a daily horoscope based on your sun sign, because no one can take them seriously. And it almost seems like they've been intentionally put in that way so no one would take them seriously.
Well, you know what the reason is behind that actually? It's pretty hard to do any kind of a forecast in a general way like that and have it apply to everyone. But it's almost like sun sign astrology, even though it kind of trivializes real astrology. I read a book, I don't want to know what the ending's going to be. If I go to a movie, I don't want somebody to tell me what's going to happen. It ruins the fun for me. The only reason to go to an astrologer is to see what are my options, what is the best way to proceed here, and what way would I be most in flow with the divine. Because we're out of touch with that most of the time in our daily lives. It's actually pretty hard to have a micro mindset while you're working on this little thing that you have to get done.
That's why I say when you manifest and make the statement at the end, for the greatest good of all concerned, that statement acknowledges that although we manifest with our own personal sovereignty, we also understand the universe has to take into account everybody who's involved. And so that's the art of surrender, that we say, I want this, but I'm not the only person involved here. Everybody else has to have all of their synchronicities lined up for this to happen to me. And I surrender to the universe to work out how that happens. And I trust that it's being worked on. And when all the people that are involved, the entire universal forces at work, all the planets, all the people, everybody that has to line up, I trust when the universe has had an opportunity to work out those details, it will be revealed to me.
Exactly. Each one of us has a spark of the divine within us. And that's what the signs are describing, is what aspect of the divine we are embodying and playing a role. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a divine role. And so when you go to an astrologer, you want to know, okay, things feel, suddenly I feel like nobody is there for me. My friends are gone. My coworkers seem annoyed with me. I can't talk to my boss. Even my spouse is like busy. What happened? Am I imagining this? And actually, something did happen. There was a shift in energy. A planetary period started and another one ended, and one planet took over, and each planet has its own vibration and its own role to play. And so I could tell them, well, yes, that really did happen. No, you're not imagining it, but this is what it means, and this is what you can do with this time. It may not feel good sometimes, but if you know what it's about, it changes how you see it. When you shift your perspective, you shift your experience. So that's what it's good for. So, you know, nobody can really fully answer that question, because I think at this point in time we don't have enough information to really be able to see the whole picture. But I see over and over again in my work that the universe and each one of us, we're participating in something together. You know, God didn't say, okay, this is going to be your life and you have no say in it. It doesn't work like that. Which, thank God, I'm glad.
Do you use numbers or numerology?
Yes, I do.
Quite a bit?
Yeah, I do. I that's one of the things I do automatically. It's just one of the things that I've, you know, learned.
What is the commonality of numerology and astrology? I mean, they have some kind of joining of forces of...
Oh, wow. Well, numerology is not my expertise, but each one of the planets correlates to a number, and each number has a particular role to play or a vibration. It's kind of connected to the elements, because a lot of astrology is about the interplay of the elements and how that is infused in everything. I'm not sure how to actually answer that question. Maybe if you make it a little bit more concrete.
But they are related.
They are related. Like, for instance, probably if we took your birth date and I added up each one of the numbers, and the number that it came to finally when everything was added together would correspond probably to something important in your, okay. And number 5 has to do with freedom versus self-discipline, and it's a mystical number. Like, well, actually all the numbers are mystical in one way or another. There's a lot involved in the 5, and it can be very, how can I put this? A 5 energy person can be scattered all over the place, or they have a much larger vision of everything, and they're able to bring together all those scattered pieces into something. So it can go one way or the other.
I used to have on my license plate a personalized license plate that said articulator. Because to articulate isn't necessarily to have clear speech, but to articulate is to take all the little pieces of something and collect them and put them together into something meaningful.
Right. You know, when you were talking earlier, when you were saying, excuse me for crying, I really can't help myself. Do you know what that is?
No.
That's a Pisces moon thing.
I do have a Pisces moon.
And in fact, I was so worried. I was like, okay, I know that my careers are going to require me to start speaking in public, but I'm worried that something is going to make me cry. And I'm just going to stand there. It's so embarrassing, you know?
No, just have the Kleenex there. Yeah, or somebody will bring them to you. I got over that a long time ago. It just happens.
Well, that's nice to know.
And I do have a Pisces moon rising.
Yes, I know. I remember. I did your chart. I remember.
Okay, thank you so much. Karen is going to be here a few minutes afterward if you have any questions. That was a lot of fun.
Yes,
thank you for being here. That was very enlightening, and I certainly feel like I know more about it now.
Good.
Thank you. So we're just going to have our our envelopes go out. And I do have just a few announcements. Of course, the talk of the town is our big road, which you heard here today. Recognizing truths where you see them. Your free will is always intact. If something resonates with you, take it into your cellular memory and take it home. And if it doesn't, that's okay.